Bring in Paul Dance. He's an attorney and former Trump administration official. Paul, good morning. You previously actually sat on a jury yourself, I'm told, in the very same courtroom. The judge told the jury to put aside their biases toward Mr. Trump, whatever they are. How confident are you that can happen, given this is happening in liberal Manhattan?
Sure. Well, I practiced for 25 years in state and federal courts in Manhattan. And, you know, as a former New Yorker, I now work at the Heritage Foundation. I'm not totally convinced that the jury pool is really up to snuff. The reality is that what we've seen with the judge, he's very much curated this trial in a way that's so stilted that things swerved off the tracks from any resemblance of a fair trial at this stage.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
As someone who's been in those jury situations, I have sympathy for the jurors, but it's really the judge at this stage that's already kind of cooked the books.
Okay, so that's your thought on that. Average Americans who are not attorneys, like me, seem a bit confused by a few things. The judge's instructions, leaving it up to the jury, and make sure I have this right, to sort of pick the path to felony status of the charges, not requiring them to all be unanimous on which path made it a crime. Is that right? And it all feels a bit convoluted. Can you explain it? And have you ever heard anything like this exactly?
Well, you're precisely right. It's completely convoluted, and no, we haven't. The reality is that this is a complete derogation. It's not really a legal aspect right now. Obviously, even the Supreme Court says that, you know, it's fundamental that juries have to work in unanimity. And the judge's instruction the other day saying that, you know, you could basically have a smorgasbord of underlying crimes and that he would count that as unanimous is complete derogation. Here, the point is not the verdict. That ultimately, this will be reversed. Even the prosecution knows this. It's a malicious prosecution, and the court really seems to be in on it.
Yeah, well, that's your opinion, of course. Caitlin told us earlier about the jury requesting transcripts from testimony from the National Enquirer, publisher David Pecker, and former fixer Michael Cohen. What's your takeaway from this? And is it typical for them to have to listen but not be able to read the transcripts and actually take it with them?
Sure, you know, it's very difficult. First of all, they haven't talked about the trial for 7 weeks. You can't talk to the other jurors, even when you're on a break, about what you just heard. So they know everything about one another, but they've never talked about the case. In the situations I was on, we didn't even get to take notes. So it's very difficult. You get in the jury room, and people are just recalling things off the top of their head. In certain cases, they put down a list of things people want to hear back, and they'll tell the foreperson, and they'll make the request. So that's not unusual. I remember being several times called back in and read testimony. Now, in my particular case, I was a holdout juror, so I know exactly what that takes. And it's difficult. There's a lot of pressure on the jury to find the verdict.
Yeah, and we can't forget that these jurors are going to be going back to their everyday life, and that, you know, the impact of all that as well. I mean, this is game-changing, life-changing for them.
It's absolutely. I mean, look, when I was on the jury, we were actually sequestered. I mean, I spent the night in the Ramada Inn, and we had to get court permission to go down and have a beer in the lobby.
Wow.
These guys are going back home. Everyone kind of knows in their building. You know, you live in apartment buildings. You haven't been around. All of a sudden, you're back when the jury's not in session. People got the clue that you're on the Trump jury. It's very much difficult. You know, as New York, the city votes 95% Democrat. It's very left-leaning. It's going to be very difficult for a person to really fit in and not be ostracized if word gets out that they voted the other way on the case.
Caitlin, Paul mentioned,
estimation.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.